Hi guys, this is Asal. I'm studying for the bar and I wanted to review my notes with you. So today I'm studying civil procedure, specifically default judgments. I would like you to know that actually default judgments is a very simple rule and it'll take me less than maybe 6 minutes to describe it for you. So I'm gonna jump right into it. There's a few things I want to say and then I'm gonna talk to you about the rules of default judgment. The first thing I wanted to say is that if you've been notified about a lawsuit, show up. That's very important. You don't want to lose at the first step of the game. Think about it as a game of chess. If you're notified about a lawsuit, don't let the other side just go checkmate. Show up and defend yourself. Also, if there's a judgment against you, take action to remove the judgment against you. Because if you don't take action, this could have really bad consequences. It could damage your credit report. It could have a lot of bad effects. So I suggest you find an attorney as soon as possible. And also, finally, if you don't show up, then there's a default judgment against you. And I'm going to jump right in about what a default judgment actually is. So let's introduce the concept of default judgment. Okay, the concept. How do I explain the concept? For example, imagine a game of football or just like any game, any sports game at all that you'd like to think of. What happens in sports if the competitor doesn't show up? Then he loses by default, right? To the party that does show up. So actually, default judgment is like the game of sports. So if the other side does not show up, then he loses by default to the other party. So that's how it works. So the next thing I would like to talk about is how a default judgment works, like the concept. First of all, the plaintiff files a complaint. Then the plaintiff properly serves the complaint, then the defendant must respond. So first the plaintiff files, then the plaintiff properly serves the papers, and then the defendant must respond. Okay, if they don't respond, they're gonna lose. So the step one is entry of default. How does that work? As I just told you, plaintiff files and serves the complaint. 21 days pass. If the defendant fails to respond, what's going to happen? There's an entry of default. So this is under the FRCP 55, FRCP 55A. That's where you want to look. So real quick, I would like to describe that FRCP 55A for you. This is what the rule says. When a party against whom a judgment for affirmative relief is sought, for example, a defendant has failed to plead or otherwise defend, and that failure to show by affidavit or otherwise, the clerk must enter the party's default. So if they don't show up, there's a default. And then the next thing, this is how the plaintiff wins. And then the next thing I would like to talk about is how the clerk enters the default judgment and how the plaintiff must apply to the court. So the clerk enters default judgment. The claim is for a sum certain. Remember that word, sum certain, and when there's no evidence of damages needed. Okay, for example, there's some cases, I've written it here, such as debt collection, or when there are these liquidated damages and there is a certain sum, then that's how this works, the certain sum certain. And also over here, the plaintiff must apply to the court. What do I mean by this? Claim not for sum certain and need evidence on damages. So this is another way. Also, what is this sum certain that I kept on saying? When there's no factual doubt about the amount due to the plaintiff. So if there's no factual doubt, that is a sum certain, okay? And here the court can determine without extrinsic evidence. So the court doesn't have to go far to know the amount. So anyway, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about this. So all you need to know about default judgment rule is that FRCP that I just described. And I would like to conclude by reading that rule one more time because it's very important. The Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 55 says that when a party against whom a judgment for affirmative relief is sought, for example, the defendant has failed to plead or otherwise defend, and that failure to show by affidavit or otherwise the clerk of the court must enter the party's default. So that's the rule, FRCP 55A, that's where you look for it. I hope you enjoy studying. Good luck.